Hello everyone, glad to have you here. If this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories like this. Now, get comfortable. It's time to dive into the story Zombie Outbreak at Disneyland, trapped in the happiest place on Earth. Now, let's get started. I had been promising this trip for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time we passed a Disney commercial on TV, my kids would give me that look. The look that said, "When, Dad?" And every time I'd answer the same way, "Soon." Now, here we were, a clear, sunny morning. The air smelled of popcorn and churros. Main Street was already buzzing with music and the chatter of families. My wife, Claire, had the camera out before we even passed the front gates. Our kids, Ethan and Lily, ran ahead, darting between the costumed cast members like they just stepped into another world. I had expected crowds, but not this many. It felt like every step forward was a shuffle. Strollers bumped into my legs. Kids cried. Somewhere, someone was laughing too loud. The noise pressed in from all sides, but I didn't care. The kids were smiling and that was enough. We started with the carousel, then Dumbo, then a quick detour to get autographs from a couple of princesses. By mid-morning, I had already spent more on snacks than I wanted to think about. But when Lily leaned her head against my arm, holding a giant cotton candy bigger than her face, I figured it was worth it. The first hint that something was off came around 10:30. We were making our way toward Adventureland when a loudspeaker announcement crackled to life. Something about a temporary attraction closure near the entrance. Nobody paid much attention. In a place like this, things closed all the time. Mechanical issues, cleaning, maybe a performer fainting in the heat. But then we saw the security staff. They weren't just walking. They were running, cutting through the crowd in twos and threes, talking into radios. A few guests stopped to watch. Someone nearby muttered, "Probably just some drunk guy." We kept going. The kids wanted to do Pirates of the Caribbean, and I wasn't going to ruin their day over some minor incident. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the air had changed. It was subtle, like the tension you feel before a thunderstorm. Inside the queue for Pirates, it was cooler, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of water and old wood. The line moved slow, winding through the fake docks and lantern-lit passages. Claire leaned close and said she'd seen a man near the entrance, clutching his arm and bleeding. She thought maybe he'd been in a fight. I shrugged it off, but my stomach tightened. Halfway through the ride, as we drifted past the animatronic skeletons, I noticed something strange. An announcement over the speakers, but it wasn't part of the ride. It was faint, almost drowned out by the music. Something about restricted movement in the park and security lockdown. When we came out, the crowd felt different. People were moving faster, talking louder. A few kids were crying. Not the tired kind of crying, but scared crying. In the distance toward Main Street, I heard shouting. "Stay here with the kids," I told Claire. I walked a few steps toward the commotion, but couldn't see much. A knot of people was forming, some climbing onto benches to get a better view. I caught a glimpse of a man on the ground. Security crouched around him. His shirt was soaked in red. One of the guards yelled at the crowd to back up. Another shouted into his radio. And then, clear as day, I saw the man on the ground twist. Grab the leg of the guard and bite down. It didn't make sense. My brain refused to process it. The guard screamed, and more security rushed in. People gasped, stumbled back, started pushing away from the scene. Someone yelled, "He's biting him." And the words ripped through the air like a spark in dry grass. I turned and ran back to Claire. "We need to go," I said. She didn't argue. The kids, sensing the shift in our voices, stayed close. We pushed through the crowd toward the nearest path out of Adventureland. The music was still playing overhead, cheerful and bright. But it felt wrong now, like it belonged to another world entirely. Somewhere deep in my chest, I felt the first real crack in the day. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why, but I knew one thing. We weren't safe here anymore. The crowd swallowed us whole as we tried to move. Parents clutched their children. People glanced over their shoulders. The usual light-hearted chatter had turned into a low, uneasy buzz. I kept my hands on Ethan and Lily, guiding them through the press of bodies while Claire followed close behind. I was aiming for the central hub, thinking we could get to the entrance gates from there, but every path seemed more clogged than the last. A cast member in a crisp uniform stood at the end of a walkway, arms outstretched, waving people in another direction. "This way, sir. Frontierland is closed for now." Closed? Since when did whole sections of the park close in the middle of the day? I didn't like the way she was forcing people away from the entrance. It felt wrong. We turned down a side path toward Fantasyland, thinking we could cut through and circle back. That's when the screaming started. Not playful roller coaster screams. Not the kind that make you laugh after. These were raw, tearing screams, the kind that make your spine lock up. I looked over and saw people scattering from the direction of Sleeping Beauty Castle. A man in a red t-shirt came running straight toward us, shoving through the crowd. His face was slick with sweat and his eyes were wide. He wasn't looking where he was going. He slammed into me, nearly knocking me off my feet. "They're biting people," he gasped before disappearing into the throng. I wanted to dismiss it. Some wild rumor, a misunderstanding. But the memory of what I saw back near the entrance refused to fade. We reached the open space near the carousel. For a moment, I thought we'd caught a break. More room to move. Fewer people. Then I saw them. 2 security guards were struggling with a man near the Dumbo ride. His arms were flailing, teeth snapping at the air. His mouth was smeared with something dark. One guard had blood down his sleeve. The other was shouting into a radio for backup. The man they were holding let out a guttural animal sound and lunged forward, sinking his teeth into the guard's neck. The crowd broke. People shoved, tripped, and trampled each other trying to get away. Ethan started crying. Lily clung to my arms so tight it hurt. CLA's voice was high and sharp. "We have to move now." We ran toward the nearest food court, dodging fallen strollers and abandoned backpacks. I kept scanning for an open route, but every turn seemed blocked by walls of panicked guests or cast members directing people deeper into the park. Somewhere to our left, a loud explosion went off. Not fireworks. This was sharper, harder. People screamed again and a wave of bodies surged in our direction. I pulled the kids against a wall to keep from being crushed. Claire's face was pale. "We're not getting out, are we?" "I'll find a way," I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing. We ducked into a shaded arcade walkway, the kind lined with small souvenir shops. Most were shuttered now, their metal gates rattling down. A few people crouched behind counters, whispering into phones. One man was wrapping a woman's arm in a torn t-shirt, blood soaking through in seconds. She was shaking uncontrollably. Then I heard it, that wet tearing sound followed by a low moan. I looked over. At the far end of the walkway, a woman in a yellow sundress was hunched over a fallen man, her shoulders jerking. She lifted her head, her mouth was red, her eyes fixed on us. "Go!" I barked, shoving Claire and the kids forward. We broke into a run, bursting out into the sunlight near the Small World ride. The cheery facade loomed over us, all bright colors and grinning faces. But the music playing from the speakers was warbling, skipping. Guests were running past us in all directions, no longer following the paths. I caught sight of a group of infected, for maybe 5, shuffling into the open plaza from the other side. Their movements were jerky, uneven, but they were fast when they saw people. Too fast. "Over there." Claire pointed to a maintenance gate partially open near a hedge. We sprinted for it. I shoved the kids through first, then Claire, then ducked inside myself. The noise dropped instantly, replaced by the hum of machinery and the smell of oil. We were behind the scenes now. Narrow service corridors, stacks of crates, and employee carts parked haphazardly. A worker in a reflective vest ran past without even looking at us. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to catch my breath. My heart felt like it was going to tear through my chest. "What's happening, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. I couldn't answer him. Not yet. Not until I figured out where to go. Somewhere in the distance, another damned scream rose, sharp and sudden, then cut off like a switch had been thrown. The sound echoed through the service halls. Whatever was happening in Disneyland wasn't just at the front gates anymore. It was everywhere. The service corridors twisted like a maze. Every turn looked the same. Gray walls, concrete floors, and the hum of unseen machinery. I kept one hand on Ethan's shoulder and the other on Lily's. Claire stayed just behind me, her breathing ragged. Somewhere ahead, footsteps echoed. I hesitated, unsure if they belonged to a panicked guest or something worse. We passed a stack of cleaning supplies, a rolling mop bucket, and a metal pipe lying against the wall. I grabbed the pipe without thinking. It felt heavy and cold in my hand, but it made me feel less exposed. We came to a door marked authorized personnel only. I pushed it open and stepped into a small break room. The smell of coffee and microwaved food still hung in the air. 2 park employees were huddled in the corner. One of them with his arm wrapped in duct tape. Blood seeping through. "Are the exits open?" I asked. The uninjured one shook his head quickly. "They locked the gates, said it was a containment thing." His voice cracked. "We're stuck." The words hit harder than I expected. The exit's locked. The perfect family trip, now a cage. CLA's voice was tight. "We can't just sit here. We have kids." The employee nodded toward another door. "That leads toward the parade storage area. Fewer people back there. Might be safer." Safer wasn't safe, but it was something. I thanked him and we moved on. The next hallway was darker. Emergency lights glowed red, casting long shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a faint, tiny melody drifted through the air. I recognized it instantly. It's a small world after all, playing on a loop, warped and slow, like it was coming from a broken speaker. We passed racks of costumes, princess dresses, pirate coats, oversized mascot heads, staring blankly. Lily squeezed my hand tighter when we walked by them. I could feel her trembling. Then we heard it. A thud, then another. Not footsteps, more like something slamming against metal. I stopped, listening. The sound came from a maintenance bay ahead where the light spilled out from a half-open door. Claire leaned close. "We can't go that way." Before I could answer, the door burst open. A man in a security uniform stumbled through, clutching his side. His shirt was soaked in blood. He looked at us, eyes wide, then fell to his knees. "They're coming," he gasped. Behind him, the shadows moved. Figures lurched forward. 3 of them, their clothes torn, their mouths wet with red. They moved faster when they saw us. "Run!" I yelled. We bolted down the nearest hallway. The sound of pounding footsteps. No, pounding feet and dragging limbs behind us. The corridors twisted again, branching left and right. I picked left, not even thinking, just moving. We burst into the parade storage area, a vast warehouse filled with floats, props, and giant set pieces. The air smelled of paint and grease. It was quieter here, but the wide open space made me feel exposed. I scanned for an exit and spotted a staircase leading to a raised platform. From there, we could see most of the room and any approach. We climbed quickly. I pulled the kids up first, then Claire. My chest burned from the effort, but I forced myself to stay alert. From the platform, I spotted a side door marked emergency exit. It was chained shut with a heavy lock. My stomach turned. Even here, there was no easy way out. Claire pointed toward the far end of the warehouse. There, that's a staff loading dock. Maybe it's open. We stayed high, moving along the catwalk. Below us, the infected entered the warehouse. Their movements jerky but purposeful. They sniffed the air, heads snapping toward sounds. Ethan whispered, "Dad, they're looking for us." I didn't want to agree, but I couldn't lie to him either. That's why we're quiet. We reached a stairwell on the far side and descended slowly, my grip tight on the pipe. The loading dock door was in sight now, tall metal, and maybe our way out. But just as I reached for the handle, I heard the heavy thud of another lock sliding into place from the other side. Someone was sealing it shut. I banged on the door. "Hey, there are kids here. Open up." A muffled voice answered, but the words were lost in the clang of the lock. Then silence. Claire's face was pale. "They're keeping us in." The reality settled over me like ice. The infected were behind us. The doors were locked ahead. Disneyland wasn't just collapsing. It was becoming a trap. The pounding on the loading dock door stopped, replaced by silence. That silence was worse than the noise. It meant whoever had locked it was gone or didn't want to hear us anymore. The kids looked at me, waiting for answers I didn't have. Claire's eyes were wet, her voice low. "What do we do now?" I wanted to say we'd find another way out. I wanted to tell them it would be fine, but the truth was chewing at me. The infected weren't going away, and every door we found seemed to be locked. A muffled crash echoed from the warehouse. Something had been knocked over. The infected were moving closer. "We can't stay here," I said, keeping my voice calm. "We need higher ground again. Somewhere with a door we can block." We moved quickly along the edge of the warehouse, weaving between parade floats shaped like smiling characters, now shadowed and eerie in the dim light. Lily clung to my shirt. Ethan gripped my hand so tight my knuckles ached. Near the back of the warehouse was a maintenance stairwell that led up to a control room. Overlooking the space, the door was open. I ushered everyone inside and closed it behind us, locking the handle. The room was small, barely more than a glass box with a desk, a chair, and some old control panels. From up here, I could see the infected moving among the floats. There were more now, at least a dozen, all drifting slowly, searching. Claire pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering. This was supposed to be our happy trip. I didn't know what to say. She wasn't wrong. I thought about the months we'd planned this, the overtime shifts I'd taken to pay for it. I thought about the kids counting down the days. The look on their faces when we walked through the gates this morning. All that effort, all that waiting, and now this. A thud shook the door behind us. My grip on the pipe tightened. I turned, ready to swing, but it was a man, mid-50s, wearing a custodian's uniform. His chest was heaving, and his eyes darted around the room. "Please," he gasped. "Let me in." I hesitated only a moment before unlocking the door and pulling him inside. He collapsed against the wall, clutching his leg. A ragged bite mark was visible through his torn pants. Claire saw it, too. "He's hurt." The man looked at me, his voice. "They got me in the tunnels. Didn't think they were that fast." I swallowed hard. I knew what a bite meant. I had seen enough movies, but hearing it from him here now, it wasn't fiction anymore. "Lock the door," he said. "You've got kids. Keep them safe as long as you can." He slid down to the floor, his breathing shallow. I wanted to ask his name, but I wasn't sure I could handle the answer. Instead, I crouched down beside him. "I'm sorry." He gave a faint smile. "Not your fault. Just don't let me hurt anyone when it happens." Those words sat heavy in the air. Claire took the kids to the far corner, trying to keep their eyes away from him. I stayed where I was, pipe in hand, watching the man's chest rise and fall. Minutes passed like hours. Outside, the infected prowled the warehouse floor, sometimes bumping into floats, sometimes just standing still as if listening. The faint sound of the "It's a Small World" song still played somewhere in the distance, slow and broken. Then the custodian's breathing stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then his fingers twitched. His head turned, eyes snapping open, now cloudy and wrong. He moved fast, faster than I expected. I swung the pipe before he could get up. The sound it made was something I'll never forget. When it was over, I stood there breathing hard, my arms shaking. Claire didn't say anything. The kids didn't look at me, but I knew they had heard it all. I dragged the body to the far side of the room, my hands slick. My mind kept replaying his last words. He had known exactly what was coming, and he had faced it anyway. That was the cost of survival here. Not just running, not just hiding, but doing the things you never thought you could do. I sat down beside Claire and put an arm around her. Ethan leaned into me. Lily's hand found mine. For a moment, we were just together, breathing in the quiet, but below us, the infected were still searching. And I knew that quiet wouldn't last. The control room wouldn't hold forever. The infected below were restless, knocking into floats and slamming their hands against walls. Every so often, one would tilt its head back, sniffing the air like it could taste our presence. We had to move. I scanned the warehouse again. On the far side was a service tunnel marked Ride Access, Haunted Mansion. It was a gamble, but it looked like the only path not swarming with infected. "Stay close no matter what happens," I told Claire and the kids. They nodded, eyes wide. We unlocked the door and slipped into the catwalk. The infected reacted instantly, head snapping toward the sound. I gripped the pipe and led the way down the metal stairs, each step echoing like a drum beat. Halfway down, one of them lunged from behind a float, fingers clawing for my arm. I swung hard. The crack echoed and the thing went limp, but more were already closing in. "Move!" I shouted. We weaved between floats, ducking under giant papier-mâché animals and pushing past broken props. Claire kept the kids moving while I stayed behind them, ready to swing at anything that got too close. The service tunnel door was heavy, painted green to blend in. I shoved it open and pulled everyone inside, slamming it shut just as the first infected slammed against it. The tunnel was narrow with low ceilings and flickering lights. It smelled of dust, oil, and mildew. Somewhere up ahead, the sound of the haunted mansion's eerie organ music drifted through the air. It should have been comforting, something familiar. But here, it just felt wrong. We moved quickly, following the music. The tunnel eventually opened into the ride's backstage area. Empty doom buggies sat idle on the track, their black shells gleaming under dim light. Animatronic ghosts stood frozen, their faces twisted in permanent grins. "This way," I whispered, pointing toward the loading platform. We climbed into one of the buggies. I pulled the lap bar down and gripped the pipe across my knees. The ride creaked to life, carrying us forward. For a few moments, it felt like we might actually slip past the chaos. The buggy glided through dark hallways, lit by green and purple lights. The animatronics groaned and sang their ghostly songs. The kids huddled between us, their eyes darting to every shadow. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw movement, too fast to be part of the ride. An infected stumbled out from behind a curtain, its head jerking unnaturally, its eyes locked on us, and it let out a rasping growl. Two more followed, their feet dragging, but their hands reaching. The buggy kept moving slow and steady, like it had all the time in the world. "They're getting in," Claire cried. I stood, bracing myself on the edge of the buggy. The first infected lunged, grabbing the side. I brought the pipe down hard. It let go, tumbling backward, but the second one scrambled onto the track ahead, forcing the ride to stop with a sudden jolt. The darkness was heavy now, broken only by the eerie glow of the set pieces. Infected shapes shuffled closer from both sides. Out, I yelled. Now. We climbed out, feet hitting the track with a metallic thud. I took the lead, swinging at anything that came close while Claire kept the kids moving. The narrow passage worked in our favor. Only 1 or 2 infected could reach us at a time, but it was still too many. We pushed through a hidden door meant for staff spilling into another backstage corridor. The organ music faded, replaced by muffled screams somewhere deeper in the park. Ahead, a maintenance map hung on the wall. I scanned it quickly. There was a service exit near the railroad tracks on the park's edge. If it was open, it could get us out. We followed the map through another maze of hallways. The infected never far behind. Sometimes we heard them pounding on doors we just passed. Sometimes we caught glimpses of them through gaps in the walls. When we reached the final corridor, my heart sank. The exit door was open, but so was the outside. A dozen infected wandered the tracks, their silhouettes swaying in the afternoon light. They're blocking it, Claire whispered. We couldn't wait. More were coming from behind us. I tightened my grip on the pipe. When I move, you run for that door and don't stop. I'll be right behind you. Claire's eyes searched mine, reading the truth there. She nodded once. I stepped out first, shouting to draw the infected toward me. They turned, snarling, and charged. The first swung its arm, and I sidestepped, bringing the pipe across its head. The second went down with a crack to the knee. I kept moving, swinging, forcing them to follow me away from the door. Go! I roared. Claire grabbed the kids and ran. I heard their footsteps pounding against the gravel, the clang of the door slamming shut behind them. One of the infected lunged from the side, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled but caught myself jamming the pipe into its throat before shoving it back. I sprinted for the door, my lungs burning. An infected hand closed around my sleeve, tearing the fabric as I wrenched free. I dove through the doorway, slamming it shut just as the first body hit it from the other side. We were outside the park now, standing on a narrow road that led away from the tracks. The air smelled different, still tense, but free of the sweet, cloying scent of Disneyland. Claire hugged me hard, her voice breaking. I thought you weren't coming. I said I'd be right behind you, I told her, even though a part of me had doubted it. The park was still visible behind us, its cheerful towers and spires framed against a sky that no longer felt welcoming. Screams still echoed from inside. We started walking, not knowing where the road led, only that it was away from here. The road curved away from Disneyland, lined with tall fences and palm trees swaying in the late afternoon wind. I didn't ask how they found us. I already knew. The infected didn't give up. They just kept searching until they heard or smelled something worth chasing. And now it was us. The guard motioned for us to follow him through a back hallway. There's an emergency exit through the loading bay. From there, you make for the river. Helicopter pickup point is on the far side. You run. You don't stop. You don't look back. Another crash rang out from the front doors. This one accompanied by the high-pitched screech of metal bending. We moved quickly. Families clutched whatever they could carry. Children whimpered. My heart pounded so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. The back exit was a heavy roll-up door. The guard began cranking it open, the sound echoing in the warehouse. I winced. Too loud. And then we heard it. Screams behind us. The front doors had given way. The infected were inside. The guard's voice was urgent. Go. Go. The door wasn't fully open yet, but I didn't care. I shoved the kids under it, then Claire, then ducked through myself. Cold air hit my face. We were in the open now, an alley between two warehouses. The sound of feet slapping against concrete was close behind. We ran. My lungs burned instantly, my legs screaming in protest. But stopping wasn't an option. Claire carried Lily, her face pale but determined. Ethan was in front of me, his small frame pumping as fast as it could. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Every time I did, the infected were closer. Dozens of them. The alley opened onto a wide street, empty except for a few overturned trash bins and a delivery truck lying on its side. Beyond that, maybe 3 blocks away, I saw the floodlights, the helicopter zone. The guard's voice echoed in my head. You run. You don't stop. You don't look back. We sprinted. My ears filled with the pounding of my heartbeat. The slap of shoes on pavement and the ragged growls of the things chasing us. A man from one of the other families tripped. His wife screamed, reaching for him, but he waved her on. The infected swarmed him in seconds. We didn't stop. Halfway there, a side street burst alive with movement. More infected poured in from both sides. They were cutting us off. This way, I shouted, yanking Claire toward an alley that ran parallel to the main road. It was narrower, darker, the smell of garbage thick in the air. We vaulted over a fallen dumpster and came out onto another street, closer to the lights now. But with only seconds to spare, the helicopter was already there, its blade spinning, kicking up dust and debris. Soldiers waved frantically, motioning for us to hurry. We were 20 yards away when the first infected reached us. I swung the pipe with everything I had, the impact rattling my bones. Claire kept moving, Ethan and Lily ahead of her. Another one lunged at me. I jammed the pipe into its chest, shoving it back, then turned and ran. The soldiers were shouting now, their rifles barking. A few of the infected dropped, but more just kept coming. Claire was almost to the landing zone when Lily slipped from her arms, falling to the ground. Claire spun, scooping her up. But that moment cost us. 3 of them were right behind me. I could feel the heat of their breath. I pushed Claire forward. Go get them on. She hesitated, her eyes locking on mine. Come with us. I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but the infected were too close. If I ran with them now, we'd all be dragged down. I'll be right behind you. I lied. Go. Claire's face twisted, but she obeyed. The soldiers pulled her and the kids into the helicopter. I turned, swinging the pipe again, buying them seconds. One of the infected crashed into me, teeth snapping inches from my face. I shoved it back, hearing the roar of the helicopter rising above. Then blinding light. A spotlight from the chopper swept over the street. The rotor wash was deafening. I saw Claire in the open doorway. Ethan clinging to her. Lily reaching out with tiny hands. I broke free from the last one and sprinted. The soldiers leaned out, grabbing for me. I jumped. Hands caught my wrists. They hauled me up as the infected clawed at the skids. The helicopter lurched higher, leaving them behind. I collapsed inside, gasping, my chest on fire. Claire's arms were around me instantly, the kids pressing into my side. Below, the streets were a writhing sea of bodies, the lights of Disneyland still glowing faintly in the distance, a haunted kingdom surrounded by the dead. We didn't speak. We just held each other, listening to the fading roar of chaos beneath us. The sound of the blades carrying us toward whatever came next. We had made it out, but the cost would stay with us forever. We landed just as the first hints of dawn broke over the horizon. The light felt wrong, too soft, too calm, like the world was pretending nothing had happened. Soldiers ushered us off the helicopter and into a makeshift checkpoint. They took names, checked us for bites, asked questions in clipped, tired voices. The smell of antiseptic and diesel fuel filled the air. Claire kept a firm grip on Lily's hand. Ethan pressed close to my side. None of us spoke. Words felt too fragile, like they'd shattered the thin barrier holding us together. Around us, other survivors moved like ghosts. Some sobbed quietly. Some stared into nothing. A little girl clutched a stuffed Mickey Mouse, its once bright face smeared with dried blood. We were given blankets and bottles of water. The kids drank greedily. I just sat there staring at my hands, still shaking. I'd watched them, but I could still feel the weight of the pipe, the recoil of every swing. A soldier passed by, muttering to another, "Containment failed in Anaheim. They're pulling back to the river." I pretended not to hear, but the words lodged deep. Containment failed, which meant Disneyland wasn't the end. It was just the start. Claire leaned against me, her voice a whisper. "We're safe now, right?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe it. But the image of that endless tide of infected burned behind my eyes. I remembered how quickly they'd swarmed the park, how fast the laughter had turned to screaming. Safe felt like a lie. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said, "We're together. That's what matters." Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning away the early morning haze. Somewhere, someone turned on a radio. A voice crackled through static, reporting outbreaks in Los Angeles, San Diego, Las Vegas. The map in my mind kept growing darker. A medic approached, clipboard in hand. She checked our names against a list, then gave a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There's a bus heading north in 10 minutes. We'll get you to a larger camp." I nodded. North sounded good. Away from the park, away from the nightmare. As we boarded the bus, I took one last look back toward the south. The sky over that direction seemed darker, like storm clouds, but heavier, denser, and in the distance, just barely audible over the idling engine, came a faint, distorted sound. Music, high, cheery, almost childlike, the kind you'd hear drifting from a parade float. Claire frowned. "Do you hear that?" I didn't answer. My stomach twisted because I did hear it. The exact same melody that had played on Main Street that morning before everything went wrong. The driver shut the doors and the sound was gone. But my hands were cold, my heart tight. We pulled away from the camp, heading toward the unknown. Somewhere behind us, the happiest place on earth was still singing. And I knew in my gut we hadn't escaped it. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams.